I am Nikki Lunsford, part of the Middletown USA Research Project. This year we're working to find out how our social service agencies are working within our communities and how it's changed over time. Today we find ourselves at the Ross Community Center on 10th Street in Muncie, Indiana. And in front of me is Jacqueline Hanoman,
Hanoman, yes.
better known as Jackie,
Yes.
who is the executive director of the Ross Community Center and has been here, I think, since 2016?
Yes.
Okay.
3 years.
So, thank you for cooperating with this research. And
My
Jackie,
pleasure.
my first question for you today is tell me about your background / life story that brought you to the position you now occupy, because your accent tells me you did not grow up in Muncie.
No, I did not.
So please tell us about yourself.
So I am Venezuelan Guyanese. I'm a sociologist and educator. And I'm here at the Ross Center because my husband's a professor at Ball State. I did my PhD here in the US. And I was working in South Africa, to make a long story short. I was a professor in Venezuela, and then I came to the US, then we went to South Africa. I was doing a project with the University of the Free State in South Africa in the Department of Basic Education of South Africa, and we came back. John continued his work, and then I was going to go back to continue with the work I was doing, but the funding dried up. So I had to look for a job here in the US. So I looked all over and, interviewed in different places. And so we were going to have to live separately for a while. And then I was talking to, asking friends and neighbors, have you heard of anything? Because it was, Muncie's a small place, and I thought, well, I'm never going to get a job in Muncie. So one of my neighbors, actually, she was volunteering at Habitat. And she told Ray Montagno. Ray Montagno was the coordinator of the Neighborhood Revitalization Project at that time. And she told Ray, she said, I have a friend, my neighbor, who's a sociologist, and you're doing this really interesting stuff. I think, she might be interested. So I came, and I had met Ray several years ago at Ball State, but he didn't really remember me. And we had this wonderful conversation, a 2-hour-long conversation about the Neighborhood Revitalization Project. Now, this was in probably September of 2015. And it was fantastic. No, it wasn't September. It might have been October of 2015. And it was fantastic. And I loved what they were doing because my work has been on multidimensional poverty all my life. So I worked in Venezuela, in Bolivia, in South Africa, and in the US in multidimensional poverty, in community development projects. And the fact that Habitat for Humanity at that time was focusing on pouring the resources in to how do you revitalize a neighborhood was perfect. I was like, I would love to do this. And so we talked, and I said, I would love to work with you. But it wasn't a job, it was just volunteering with my expertise. And at the end of the conversation, I said, well, Ray, this is lovely, I'd love to volunteer with you. But I am looking for a job somewhere. He said, well, the Ross Community Center. And I said, where's that? He said, oh, it's just up the road. And so Lindsay Arthur at that time, he said, Lindsay, could you print out the job description? So they printed it out, and I looked at it, and I saw it was a non-for-profit. Now, I had never worked at a non-profit before. I had worked at the university. I was a professor. I'd worked at NGOs. I'd worked for large projects, large multinational projects, but I never worked for a non-profit. So I thought, ooh, can I really do this? I mean, I know I can, but... So I looked at it and I said, okay, I can do this. Of course I can do this. And what I don't know, I can learn this. And so I just went down. And I remember coming over. So we left there. And then my husband and I came over the next day. I remember standing outside the Ross Center and looking at it. And then looking around the neighborhood. And I thought, I feel comfortable here. I've worked with multidimensional poverty. This feels familiar to a certain part, because working in the barrios of Caracas, working in the townships of South Africa, working in, and seeing other, working in other parts of the US, but there is a familiarity. And I looked at it and I thought, I can see the bones, and there is, you know, when you go in and you see a house and you can see what it can become. That's what I saw.
So you felt like you were home.
I felt like I was home.
Very good. Very
and
good.
And that was wonderful.
Good. So moving on, how have the services your organization provides changed over the past 20 years?
So I've only been here now. I started in December 2015. I've only been here 3 years. Excuse me. What I've heard a lot over the last 3 years from people who have been here before. One of them is Mark, who you will be talking to in a little while. Another is that gentleman up there who you can't really see, but his name is Mike Kissick. Mike was here since he was 15 and he died last year. Mike was a stalwart of the community. And what we've heard is that the community center was created in 1974, the Garland E. Ross Recreational Center. And it was the place to be for Muncie. Little League baseball, basketball, families came, had a great time. They loved being here. It was a community, a place to build community, a place to be sports oriented. But then the factory started closing down. This used to be a very proud union neighborhood. The factory started closing down. Our families, those who could left, those who couldn't stayed, and then we started falling into the cycle of intergenerational poverty. So over time, the Ross Center expanded its services to, there was a time when they were feeding families. It was the school lunch. They were feeding children, they were feeding families. And then I can't remember exactly the year, and Mark can explain this further, the mayor of Muncie cut funding to the community centers. So the Ross Center was in peril. The neighborhood association took over. And I've had conflicting stories about that. Some have said it was okay, some have said it wasn't that great. Then it entered a period of, it was the place for kids to come and play, but it wasn't always the safest place, from what I heard. But Mike made it safe. While Mike was here, he ran the place. He wasn't the executive director, but he opened the doors. He let the kids play. They had some programs. So they just, he was the person at the Ross Center. He and his partner, Jackie Cooper. And then I also heard that there were quite a few gangs around here. And in 2014, our judo sensei, started coming, and he cleared out the gangs because he's a big, hefty guy, John Hampton, and things started cleaning up. The Ross Center, Bewley, if I'm not wrong, Bewley became a nonprofit in 2009. The Ross Center became a nonprofit in 2011, and then Mark can elaborate, because Mark was here when that happened. Right. So Mark can elaborate on that. And then they had a program director. She began as a program director, I'm not sure if in 2012. Mark can explain that further. Okay. He will explain what happened. And then in 2012, and then she became executive director, I think in 2013, and they let her go in 2014. And then Megan Quirk was the president of the board at that time, and Megan and the board, they kept the place going. So Mark would come in and work with the euchre ladies and the bingo, and they love him. And the basketball continued, and Mike would take care of basketball on Sundays and during the evenings. And so I think a few kids would continue to come. And so Mark and Alice and Megan, the board would come in and work. But they weren't full-fledged programs.
Gotcha. When did you start the preschool and the after-school care?
The preschool we began in February of 2017. And it was a collaboration with Huffer, Child Care Resource and Referral, and by 5 within the 8-12 Coalition. Gotcha. Yeah, and it's been fantastic. The after school began when I got here in 2016, January. We started again a bit more full-fledged.
Wonderful. All right, so what are the key goals of the Ross Community Center?
The key goals of the Ross Community Center are to build community. So we build community and lifelong learning for people of all ages. We go from preschool to age 95 plus.
Okay.
We have, and we focus on diverse and unique learning. So we work with not only the educational programs, as in formal educational preschool, excuse me, and out of school, summer and after school. We also we have parenting classes with adolescents. We have photography with teenagers. We have conflict resolution with teenagers. We have adult classes, entrepreneurship classes, euchre, bingo. We have a series of things, drug prevention, things throughout the year we have different things.
Okay. So what challenges are those trying to address?
The challenges that the people of our community and beyond confront. One of these challenges, starting with the youngest, the preschool, there are not enough preschools. There are not enough quality preschools in Muncie, and there are not enough quality preschools in the south side of Muncie. They're daycare, but they're not preschool. There's a big difference. And one of the challenges that we found is for the people of our community to understand the difference between daycare and preschool. We are preparing your kids holistically, socially, emotionally, and academically to enter kindergarten ready to succeed.
Formal school.
You know. So that's our preschool. And then our out of school, after school, and summer learning is to work with the kids to develop, first of all, to help them with their, to help them come up to grade level with their classes, with their academic schooling, but also their creativity and imagination. The Ross Center is the place where the creativity and imagination of the kids can flourish, blossom. Because most unfortunately, many of our kids, they're very creative when they're little ones, but then that creativity starts getting stomped out of them in school. And it really breaks my heart, and that's one of my missions, is for our kids to flourish and to go beyond what they see in their everyday, to broaden their horizons.
Okay.
With the parenting classes, it's for teenage parents, boys, young men. We talk a lot about the young women. We don't talk about the young fathers. So working with the young fathers, working with the teenagers, their self-esteem, their self-confidence, working with adults, you know, entrepreneurship, or simply having conversations. Let's have coffee and cake.
So how have those challenges changed over the years to bring them to where they are now?
I can't speak much about before I was here, but one of the challenges that we do find is that our community is very Appalachian. I've discovered that after some time, that even though it's very transient, there are still people here, lifelong residents, third generation, fourth generation, we talk about back home, and back home being Tennessee, Kentucky. And so there's that Appalachian, which I find fascinating as a sociologist, that Appalachian state of mind and mentality of my family takes care of itself, don't butt in. So they're very suspicious of outsiders. However, we are building trust with them. It takes a while, but we're building trust. One of the easiest way is through recreation, which they're familiar with. The educational programs takes a little longer because, for example, talking about the kids, oh, my kid is getting C's and D's, it doesn't really matter. Oh, my kid is getting B's, it doesn't matter. That's not the point. It's not only about the grades, it's about broadening their horizons. So those are some of the challenges. Teenage fathers, well, the teenage mothers is a bigger challenge than the teenage fathers. Teenage mothers tell us, oh no, my mom did it, my sister did it, my auntie did it, my grandmother, I don't need to learn anything.
Right.
So those are the kinds of challenges that we find. But it's really fascinating because they're very proud.
Very proud.
Yeah.
All right, so what challenges have you had in finding staff and expertise for your organizations, and have those challenges changed?
At the beginning, excuse me, we have a very small staff. So the custodian and I were the only people here for the excuse me, for the first 6 months, and the Ball State volunteers that would come in. And then I hired a part-time coordinator. She was an older woman who knew a lot about the community, well educated, but she had her own challenges, so we had to let her go. These challenges are changing a little bit. Our preschool teachers have been great. Right now we have a fantastic preschool teacher who used to be part of Huffer, who's been working for the last 20 years with childcare, so she is fantastic, so that's good. We have a coordinator who has wide knowledge, but they're all part-time. I'm the only full-time staff member. Our team is coming together. We're not perfect yet, but we're coming together.
Well, good.
You know, so
Well,
I'm
good.
very. I love the people I work with. We work well as a team.
Very good. So, your budget, and you're a 501c3. What is the source of your
Excuse me.
fundings, and how do you gain access to the sources for financial support?
So up to now, we basically work with grants. We receive generous grants from the foundations, Ball Brothers Foundation, Community Foundation, United Way, Champions for a Safe Community. So we've worked basically, IU Health Ball Memorial, Vexel Foundation. So that's one source. We also have had quite a few collaborative grants within the 812 Coalition. So with those large grants, we've gotten Lowe's grant, a Robert J. Wood Johnson grant, a Project Reinvest large grant. So that's how we've been working. Our fundraising is now starting to take off. So because we were working so hard on building the center up, that the fundraising campaign I hadn't focused on that much, but now we're starting to focus on that. Our ball fields, our baseball fields, we have 2 new baseball fields, and we had 350 kids over the summer playing baseball, ages 4 to 13, so that was fantastic. It was free for all 350 kids, but starting next summer, they will have to pay a small stipend, probably even $5, and then we will get sponsorships and scholarships. But our ball fields are going to bring us revenue, and we do have to focus a bit more on using the spaces that we have. We do get income from the basketball, the adult basketball and volleyball on the weekends and in the evening, and our judo program is only $15 a month, and some people pay, some don't have scholarships. So.
Well, good. All right. How is your organization impacted by state and federal regulations and policies, if at all?
Absolutely. We follow the state and federal policies as much as we can. So our preschool, especially with the children, our preschool, we follow the paths to quality as much as we can. And I say as much as we can in the sense of paths to quality. To be on paths to quality, you have to have your own building. You have to have, it's very strict. But we follow the quality part. Our development of the social emotional skills, the children being safe, the academic standards, and the same thing for the after school and out of school. We follow the out of school network, the Indiana out of school network standards. We work closely with Huffer, and we follow the standards. We follow the standards that Huffer works with, and by 5, and in general, just the standards of safety. You know, that is really important for us, safety.
So you're not on one of the levels of paths to quality.
We cannot be yet.
Because you're not on your, okay.
Yeah.
All right, gotcha. All right, so what about other federal regulations for your community center, for your, all that you do?
Yes, we follow all the safety regulations, of course, building regulations and codes. We follow We've had 2 small HUD grants, and so we follow
Okay.
the regulations of the HUD grants for the ball fields. Mark, can you think of others that we do?
Yeah, we'll get there when
We'll
we
to
get
that
there with him.
point, yeah.
So now, do you have any connections to faith communities?
We absolutely do. So we work closely with the Avondale Methodist Church. We work closely with Habitat for Humanity, Muncie Mission, and Revolution Church on campus, which is closely connected to Avondale.
I think you mentioned Urban Light.
Urban Light CDC and Urban Light, yes. So we all work together within the 812 Coalition and as neighborhood organizations, yes.
Great. What about neighborhood organizations? You've mentioned the 812
Yes, the
organization
812
a couple of
Coalition.
times.
So the 812 Coalition is a neighborhood revitalization coalition where all these organizations, we come together and we work within the limits of 8th Street to 12th Street, Madison to, 8th Street to 12th, Madison to Perkins. And we focus on working with the people of the community, the residents, to use their community wealth and build the resources.
It's quite an organization. I think we learned a little bit about that in our last
It is fantastic, yes.
study. And how about universities and
Yes,
other
we work
agencies?
very closely with Ball State. We work with the Office for Community Development, the Office for Diversity Engagement, Construction Management, the Department of Educational Studies, Department of Social Work. We'll have a social work intern now in the summer. Sports Administration. Our sports coordinator is a graduate student in sports administration, and we had almost all the teams come this past semester to work with the kids. Baseball,
Fun.
tennis, swimming, and we're going to start working with Ivy Tech. So,
Great. And how about other social service agencies? You mentioned Habitat, which is...
We work with Habitat, Bridges. We have received, Ingrid actually, who you just met, was from Bridges.
Okay.
It's no longer Bridges, but it's social services. We received some of our, they're not our employees, but they became our employees, came from Bridges. I'm thinking we work with the Muncie Mission, Second Harvest Food Bank. Very closely with Second Harvest Food Bank. We get a lot of our food from them, and then whatever we don't, with the fruit and everything, we supplement with shopping because we focus on healthy snacks for our kids and adults.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I want to thank you for coming here today and for highlighting the Role Center. I really appreciate it.
Do a great service for the community. Thank you very
so
much, Jackie.
I appreciate it.